I am a 17-year-old female. Recently, my parents told me to figure out how to pay for my tuition by myself. I have already been accepted into the university of my choice, and there are only a few months left until the start of the school year. I had assumed that my parents, who are financially stable, would help me with the costs. In fact, my older sister had her college expenses covered by our parents, so I did not expect that I would have to bear the burden myself. My father is an engineer and my mother is a nurse, and our family has a stable income. Given this situation, I naturally thought that my parents would pay for my tuition. I expected that they would support me in the same way they did my sister, without me having to work or take out student loans. When I compare the standards my parents set for my sister to those they set for me, I see a big difference. My sister and I are 6 years apart, and she went to business school a few years ago, with all expenses paid by our parents. My father often proudly talked about how he spared no expense to send my sister to the best school for business. He confidently said that it was an investment that would pay off significantly in the future. Hearing my father talk, I thought that if I succeeded in business in the future, I would repay my parents. However, I wanted to major in psychology, not business, so I understood that my situation was not exactly the same as my sister's. Still, when I was applying to university, my parents did not bring up the subject of tuition, so I proceeded without worry. There was no mention of the costs from my parents until I received the acceptance letter from the university I was aiming for. Ultimately, I had to bring up the subject of tuition myself and ask how I could cover the costs. I felt the need to confirm whether they would pay for my education, just as they had for my sister, so I asked my parents. Naturally, I believed they would help, but in the end they said, "You need to pay for your tuition yourself," and suggested that I work to cover the costs or use student loans. I was very shocked by their response. Since I had always believed they would support me with tuition, I was initially very angry. Especially knowing that my parents had fully covered my sister's university costs, it seemed unfair that they would not do the same for me. I think it is understandable that I was upset about this. This issue came up a few weeks ago. My parents told me there was a reason for everything and asked me to stay calm. Then my father told me about a recent event. A relative had become seriously ill. This relative was a benefactor who had helped my father at the start of his career. The person was my father's uncle, who had been diagnosed with leukemia a few years ago. My uncle once had a considerable fortune, but had squandered most of it over the years on gambling and drinking. Moreover, my uncle's children were uncooperative and hardly interacted with their father. They never visited him in the hospital and almost ignored him. In this situation, as my uncle's end was nearing, my father decided to take care of him. My uncle's wife had died long ago, and since then, he and his children had been estranged. They stopped contacting my uncle and acted as if he did not exist. Therefore, there was no one else to take care of my uncle, and my father had to step in. My uncle's addictions had led many people to distance themselves from him. Everyone wanted to avoid being burdened with the responsibility by associating with my uncle. However, my father was grateful for the opportunities my uncle had given him when he was young and felt he had to take care of him after he was diagnosed with the disease. For several years, my father continued to care for my uncle and paid all the high medical costs himself. As a result, there was hardly any money left for my college tuition. My father had to consider his future and realized that it would be very difficult to maintain a living after paying for my college tuition. Therefore, he wanted me to develop the ability to cover my tuition on my own. "I'm really sorry," he said, but he believed that I had the strength and potential to overcome this difficulty. That is why he hoped and encouraged me to pave my way for the future. Even after my father explained the situation, I could not completely suppress my anger, but I still felt that his actions were admirable and could not blame him. My father's story made sense and was believable. Indeed, my uncle had leukemia and had been distanced by his family due to his multiple addictions. Therefore, we were his only visitors, and it was quite understandable that my father was helping him with medical and living expenses. It is also true that my uncle had helped my father find his first job. When my uncle died a few months ago, my father was deeply saddened and looked devastated at the funeral. I had frequently visited my uncle with my family and had seen the special bond between my father and uncle. Therefore, it was hard for me to be angry that my father, who had spent a lot of money on my uncle's treatment and left nothing for me. After much thought, I forgave my father and told him, if necessary, I intend to find a way to cover my university tuition myself. I also said, if I really have to take out student loans, I hope you can help me a little. My mother supported my decision, and my father promised to support me in any way he could. However, my mother seemed unsettled and appeared to be troubled, but she said nothing at the time. I had believed that there were no particular problems between my parents. At the time, even if there was something between them, I could not sense it. I speculated that the reason for my mother's distress might be that, unlike my sister, I would have to work while attending university. My mother apologized to me more times than my father did, and it was clear that this was a burden for her. I assured her, it's really okay, don't worry. At least my father hadn't wasted the university funds he had used them to try to save someone's life. It was for my uncle, who had been abandoned by his family, so I thought my father's actions were admirable. I tried desperately to reassure my mother by saying, it's okay, but she still seemed to carry some anxiety, which seemed hard for her to shake off. Because it seemed impossible to prepare the funds for university, I decided to look for other means and resolved to work in the months leading up to my enrollment. Thanks to several internships I had done before, I had some savings, but they were hardly enough to contribute significantly to my tuition, and I needed to cover the shortfall. This felt like the ultimate choice for earning money, but eventually it became clear that I had no choice but to take out student loans. Honestly, I wanted to avoid this because choosing to do so meant I would continue to face the pressure of repayment throughout my future career, and I wasn't sure if I would be able to find the job I wanted after graduation. So I began researching how to start my own business. I have always had a strong interest in programming. Influenced by my father, I had been learning programming since childhood and had acquired skills beyond those of my peers. I began thinking about how to earn money doing what I loved because I needed money to live. I had been planning this slowly without telling anyone. Recently, I have been feeling quite stressed, but last week I came across an important fact. It changed the way I viewed the people around me. It helped me understand where my father's money had gone or where it was heading. You may have guessed already, but it had a deep connection with my sister. That's why I had been talking about her so often. After briefly touching on my relationship with my sister, I will tell you what I discovered. I think it will make everything make sense. My sister and I are years apart, so we never became like friends. Our relationship was not bad, but it was not intimate either. We maintained a very neutral relationship. For our parents, our relationship did not seem to be a problem, so they didn't seem particularly concerned. We weren't always together, and we didn't fight often, so there was no perceived need to intervene to improve our relationship. As a result, my sister and I naturally kept our distance. I think that was the shape we both wanted, though I'm not sure why. However, her attitude began to change after I entered high school. She started treating me as if I were a rival. We had never been close, but our relationship became even more complicated after I graduated from high school. I think it was all her fault. At the time, she had just entered university, and every time she came home, she seemed to flaunt that she had graduated from the most prestigious business school. Honestly, she acted as if she was showing off her success. Moreover, she became overtly aggressive towards me, ridiculing me more actively than before. So, when I tried to confront this, she would only say that I should take it lightly, not as if she was being cruel, but as if it were just a joke. After entering university, I felt that she really became a terrible person. She still is a terrible person, up until this day. If not, I can't understand why she acted that way after graduating from university. Before moving to her apartment, she had come back to live at home for a while, and that period was the most unbearable for me. She kept bullying me, and as a result, we had a big fight one day. After that, we stopped talking to each other, but she continued to blame me and was mean to me without any reason. Now, she is a working adult, but she still seems to believe that hurting me makes her feel better. After graduating from university, she worked for a few years at a small company, but she seemed unhappy there. She thought she was too big for that small world and was looking for something better. She constantly complained about how foolish each of her colleagues was and claimed she was far superior to him. She made excuses that she couldn't find a better job because of external factors like the economy. In my opinion, the real reason she couldn't get a good job was not necessarily because she had attended a prestigious business school. Her attitude was extremely arrogant, and I felt it was difficult to work with someone like her. This was just my view. Every time she came over, she would express her dissatisfaction during dinner time. My father would console her inflated ego by encouraging her that a better future awaited her. Instead of saying that she might get promoted or find better opportunities if she stopped doing the things that frustrated her, he simply told her, "Just do your duty." My sister and I do not follow each other on social media. In fact, I have blocked her. I have no interest in her personal life and no intention of meeting her. However, some of my friends do follow her. They follow her out of mere curiosity because their sisters were in the same grade as mine. A week ago, a few friends sent me screenshots of my sister's posts. The content was a huge shock to me. It included a family photo, and of course I was not in the picture. The caption expressed how grateful she was for our parents' help and mentioned that they were the initial investors in her business. All my friends asked me the same question. They couldn't understand how my parents could invest in my sister's business when they supposedly couldn't afford my university tuition. At that moment, I had no clue what was happening, and initially, I thought about talking to my parents, but then I decided it would be futile. In fact, I already knew the truth. Even if I brought it up with my parents, they would likely cover everything up, make my sister delete the post, and even lie to me. That day was very tough for me. I had to make a choice I felt was unavoidable. By the evening, I felt there was no need to stay with my parents any longer. I felt that they prioritized my sister over me and avoided supporting me. They told me to manage on my own while trying to support my sister no matter what. It was clear they were doing nothing for me. I understood that my parents had a wonderful child, but I felt it wasn't me. I acted normally during the day, as if nothing was wrong, but by night, I had decided to leave home. After packing my things, I took a taxi to a friend's house. I had already contacted them, so they were ready to help me with various things. However, I felt somewhat guilty for asking for further help without having requested it. They were already supporting me enough. When my parents came home and realized I was missing, they were quite upset. They worried about me being out late and not being at home, contacting me multiple times via phone and messages. They pleaded for me to come home soon or at least tell them where I was, trying to check on my well-being, but I never told them the truth. I told them that it would have been better if they had been honest from the start, rather than lying so much that they damaged the trust between us. After my parents realized I knew the truth, they said that if my sister's business succeeded, they would help me pay back my student loans. I should have seen the flow of money not as a sacrifice but rather as an investment, but for me, who was struggling without funds, it felt like nothing more than a sacrifice, and I had no intention of contacting them again. It was clear they didn't care about me, and I didn't want to live with people who neither loved nor cared about me. I was just a burden to them, and that was exactly what I wanted to avoid the most. My mother was probably even more shocked than my father. She had once left home because she couldn't agree with my father's plans, but she felt defeated and came back, as she had told me. However, I didn't answer my mother's calls and only communicated with her via text messages. I understood she felt deep regret and was sorry for what she had done to me, but I didn't know how to respond. I still harbored wounds in my heart because they had lied to me, thinking they could get away with it. It seems my parents had been arguing for a long time about the issue of me leaving home, but for some reason, my father thought it was my fault. That felt quite unfair. After all, he was the cause, and I was rather a victim of the situation, with no right for him to make me take responsibility. Ultimately, he created this situation himself. If he had been honest with me from the start, I wouldn't have felt this sense of betrayal. I might still have been angry about not having my university tuition paid, but I don't think I would have left home. I needed more time to think about what they did. My actions might have been wrong, but I needed time to overcome this event. 1 week was too short to recover from this event. Just because my father needed me to protect the family home didn't mean I was willing to return. When I needed him to support me with my tuition, he didn't help me, so I saw no reason to do the same for him now. Yet, it's true that I felt a little regretful. My mother sends me text messages every day. Previously, she just apologized, but now she not only apologizes but also expresses her profound loneliness, regret for everything, and her sincere wish for me to come home. She also mentioned that she had talked to my sister and would not fund her business any longer. The reason is that the money was originally mine. If my father were to invest in my sister's business, he intended to recover that money early on to help pay off the debt I was carrying. In the end, my mother took out a loan for my tuition and lied to protect me. My mother admitted that the investment plan was a complete failure. She truly regretted it, and that is why I want to return to my mother's side and at least talk to improve our relationship. I have mixed feelings towards my father. My mother was happy that I returned, but she and my father hadn't spoken a word to each other for several days, despite living together. My mother told me that the situation was uncertain. Furthermore, she conveyed that my sister was quite angry about stopping the investment in her business. Because of this, my sister would have to look for new investors, which would delay her business progress. Still, my mother said she would manage somehow with the funds she had, and if necessary, she would ask her parents for more money. My mother tried to support me so that I wouldn't have to worry about tuition fees. I am truly grateful for this. It was more help than I had hoped for. My friends and my mother's family felt sad that I had left home, but they were relieved and happy that the situation had improved. I cannot thank them enough for what they did during these few days. Even after university started, I continued to secretly run a business. Balancing classes and managing a company was never easy, but it was my choice. Surprisingly, the knowledge I gained in psychology lectures greatly aided my business decisions, and before I knew it, my company had become one of the most important clients for my sister's company, accounting for about 70% of her sales. In fact, I had started a small company with the friends who supported me at that time. My sister's company was using a system we developed to provide its solutions to major corporations. The transaction amount reached several hundreds of thousands annually, and it became a significant source of income for my sister's company, which employed more than 30 people. My sister didn't know yet that I was managing the company. All the transactions were done through my friends. One day, my sister contacted me through my mother. She said, "I want to meet directly with the CEO of your company and discuss a new project." At that moment, I made a decision. I revealed the truth to my sister in an email and informed her that all transactions would end. "I appreciate your business. I have an important announcement regarding our transactions. In fact, I, your sister, am the CEO of this company. I chose the path of entrepreneurship because our parents did not support my tuition. I apologize for keeping this secret. Due to changes in our management policy, we will terminate all transactions with your company at the end of this month." Late that night, my sister called me. Through the receiver, I could hear my sister's furious voice. "What do you mean? Our company's entire fundamental system was created by you guys. If you suddenly end the transaction, our company won't be able to function." I calmly replied, "We will provide a 3-month transition period. Please find a new partner during this time." However, my sister's company could not recover. Our system was made using special technology, and it was clear that switching to another company would be extremely costly and time-consuming. Major clients canceled their contracts one after another, and 6 months later, my sister's company was driven to closure. My father had invested most of his assets in my sister's business. As a result, when her company went bankrupt, most of my father's retirement savings were lost. Moreover, because he was a guarantor for the debts, they had to sell their house. My mother asked me with deep sadness, "Why did you have to go that far? We were supposed to have reconciled. Why did you have to destroy your sister's company?" My answer was, "You can't show weakness in business. My sister's company was too dependent on other systems. As a manager, I think that's fatal." My mother was shocked, but I explained that I made this decision not against my sister, but as a business owner. She understood the reason. Later, I heard that my father and mother had divorced. I haven't seen my father for a while, but I heard he became depressed because of their separation. My mother seemed quite disappointed in him and said she hadn't met him since. I have no interest in my father or sister and only wish to be happy myself. Now, the only person I can rely on is my mother. I am grateful that she kept her promise, asked her parents for support, and prepared my tuition. Currently, I am filled with gratitude that the friends I work with did not go to college and are dedicated to working. After graduating from college, I plan to grow my own company and repay my mother rather than getting a job.